Okay, let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, it's the Oxley Bomb MotoGP podcast with me, Matt Oxley, old racer journalist, and Peter Bomb, tech bro, tech genius. We've got a fantastic episode coming up for you now because we are once again answering questions from our esteemed Patreon supporters. If you want to ask us questions or chat with us, why the fuck would you want to do that? But anyway, some people do apparently. If you want to chat with us, you need to support us on Patreon. Go to oxleybomb.com, blah, 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 blah. Right, let's dive straight in. So we're starting off with, we've got a few celebrity questions here. We've got a lot of celebrity audiences listening to us. This is Prince Harry. He says, hang on a minute, what's happened? We were supposed to have all the contracts announced, 2027 contracts announced by the time of the Thai Grand Prix. So what is going on? Nothing's been announced officially pretty much. It's all rumor and hearsay. Well, Peter and my theory is that basically the contract, this is the biggest ever game of musical chairs in the history of MotoGP. We've got 19 riders of 22 up for contract change, and that's never happened before. And basically, why is it all slowed down? And, all the news of Alex Marquez to KTM, Fabio Quartararo to Honda, Pedro Acosta to Ducati, etc., etc., etc.
Jorge Martin to Yamaha, that's the one.
Jorge Martin to Yamaha. It's all gone quiet. It's all gone quiet. So what's going on? Well, it's pretty simple, really. Any kind of contract game, you start off with the fastest, with the best rider. And then it kind of all falls into place. Once he's confirmed, then everything else tends to fall into place. Nobody can really move until the best manufacturer and best rider have sorted out their deal. And at the moment, Marc Marquez and Ducati still haven't agreed a new deal. The kind of stumbling block, what we're told, is that Marc wants a 1-year contract in 2027, first year of the 850s, very sensible. You don't want to sign up for a 2-year contract with anyone because who knows, they might have the worst bike. So you want to be able to jump ship at the end of 27. What do you feel about it, Peter?
Yeah, he holds up the whole train. The reason for a 1-year contract, it's not that cut clear for me why he insists on a 1 year, why he seems to insist on a 1-year deal. There is one record to break. He needs to do one more World Championship. You always need to do another World Championship, but he needs to do one in his head for sure. But not counting on Ducati, thinking Ducati will get completely lost in the new regulations, that's not very, very likely. They're not as dominant at the moment as they've been for years, but that doesn't mean they're in all sorts of trouble. Maybe it's himself, his physical condition that he's doubting, and that probably he wants, or maybe a combination. I think he's doubting his ability to do another year after this year. With the last shoulder injury, that's after 30, injuries come in harder and go deeper and hurt more and stay longer.
I think, he's at the point of his career where a 1-year contract makes sense also, regardless of the 850 thing, because, you just don't know how long you're going to want to carry on. He might decide at the end of this season he's had enough. He might decide at the end of 2027 he's had enough. He might... I remember interviewing him at the end of 2024, and he said another 3, 4, 5 years. But then he had a big injury at the end of 2025.
Exactly.
He seems to be, his relationship with Gemma, his girlfriend, seems pretty serious. Maybe he's just beginning to think, man, I've got a great love life going on here. I want to spend more time at home. I just want to have a nice time with my love of my life, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are part of the equation. But I'm not sure that the fact that of his lingering shoulder injury and just general physical situation would have an effect on the contract he signs. And also you could say the same about his concern about whether he just wants to carry on, because even if you do a 2-year contract, you can say at the end of the first year, I'm out of here. I've just had enough. And no factory is going to say, no, you must race next year. No one's going to do that, because the last thing you want to do is is have somebody on your motorbike who doesn't want to be there. You know, I mean,
So
that would be just insane. You know,
that leaves only one other option is considering another manufacturer.
well, precisely, which is the whole thing with the 850.
The fairy tale will be to go back to Honda and do it again and stop there.
Yeah,
That will be the
I mean,
fairy
obviously
tale.
that's the kind of rumor, isn't it? But I don't think, you know, top racers don't tend to be emotional. You know, they just do whatever's the best thing. And I would say that Marc, I don't think it's got anything. My guess is not got anything to do with Honda. It's simply the fact that he wants to be in a position where if Ducati mess up their 850, he can jump ship.
Go. Yeah.
But the best, because he wants to be in the best situation. You know, the thing is that racing doesn't start when the lights go out, does it? It doesn't even start when you get to the racetrack. It starts when you negotiate your contract to be with the best team, to get the best motorbike. That's all part of winning. And Marc, the best contract to have for next year and beyond is a 1-year contract. Well, no, the first thing is to stay with your current manufacturer and to have a 1-year contract with your current manufacturer, because staying with your current manufacturer means that you can test the new 850 at Brno in June and at Red Bull Ring in September. Because if you're changing factories for 2027, you're not going to be allowed to do that. You know, in my opinion, there's no way if let's say Jorge Martin is going to Yamaha, there's no way Aprilia are going to let him test the Yamaha. And there's just not going to happen. And so Marc, if he's got a 1-year contract for 2027 with Ducati, he is in the best position anyone can be in, because he's got all the testing going into next year, and then he can jump ship if he wants to at the end of 2027. So yeah, that's the way I see it. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine Ducati saying, no, you're the best rider, we want you for 2 years, and he's saying, no, I don't, I want 1 year. So I'm sure there's a bit of toing and froing on that, you know. And also, there's always also egos here. You know, Marc wants what he wants. You know, he wants to use his power as the greatest talent to get what he wants. At the same time, Gigi Dall'Igna will be wanting to use the fact that he's got the best motorbike currently, you know, the best technical crew.
Yeah. Another thing that comes up when you say that is that he has seen how Gigi operates in the team when a rider is not fully on top of his game back home.
Yeah.
He probably thinks, well, if I'm in some sort of trouble, there's probably not a lot of mercy here. If I was in Aprilia, there is all the mercy in the world for a rider who fucks up left or right, or isn't there?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, now he was on the good
point.
side of the receiving part, but you can be Pecco and then you're screwed.
Yeah. All right.
It's not a money thing. I can't believe it's a money thing. Obviously, he was so-called riding for free, and obviously he's not riding for free anymore. But no, it cannot be a money thing, because he's worth everything, always, whatever money, whatever figure you put on him. And he was never driven by money. He just made sure he had the most, because that's what you're supposed to have when you're on top of the rock. But
exactly,
it's never about greed. Okay.
Exactly.
Prince Harry?
Okay, second question from John. What does the loss of Phillip Island really mean to the championship? Nothing, really. I mean, people are going to be pissed off losing it, including ourselves, because it's a beautiful racetrack. But, you know, MotoGP has lost beautiful racetracks forever, you know, for safety reasons or whatever. And there is a slight safety reason for the whole Phillip Island thing. You know, a lot of the riders do consider it not to be. It's so fast. However much runoff you've got, if you crash at 120 mile an hour corner, if you've got 2 miles of runoff, you're still going to get hurt, you know?
Well, they had a couple of goes, because people crash a lot more and in different corners than like 5 or 10 years ago. That's what airbags and safety does. You just remove the limit a little bit, and we crash now we crash 5 times a month instead of 5 times a year, because we can. And in Phillip Island, we got away with it. We've seen some scary ones into turn 1, you know, negatively spoken, is just one cold, miserable weather condition event less on the calendar. But that's because we are in the wrong time of the year, which is part of the whole problem anyway. So but what it means is that how I want to answer it is, it means we have less that is not predictable, where riders that are on top of the game and fight for a championship in the end of the year, which Phillip Island is, have to be super careful not to lose too lot. and it gives an opportunity for the group of riders that just sits below that first group that's fighting for the title. Because it's all about tire conservation. So you have to be smart. You can be stupid and lead 4 of the first 8 laps and then finish 18 because you were foolish. Speak to Jack Miller's first year on the Honda. He was a hero and then he nearly had to go to the box because he had no tire left. You got to be clever and smart and play your cards very well. It's a bit of a poker game over there where the people who have a lot to lose have to be careful and so on. And so I love the whole strategy thing that went around there. And I love that. And it's also at the same time super ballsy. Turn 1 is something to, especially with the gusting winds that are changing the strength every couple of minutes, then turn 1 is more than a handful. So
Scary.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, losing it's another change in the championship. The MotoGP never stops changing. We've lost so many great tracks over the years. Most of them have gone for good reasons, safety, but nevertheless, we miss them. All right, next question from Al Hadid Arezi. I probably murdered your name there, so I'm sorry. But I know you said no more talking about Formula 1 in our last podcast, but why do you think 2027 MotoGP will be better than 2026 F1?
What's wrong with 2026 F1? We had people are raving about a great weekend we had.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to talk much about F1, but to answer the question first, we have to explain what the question is all about. So F1 has had a massive rule change this year. So basically, their power plants, their power units, PUs as they call them. That's what you have to call an engine now, as a PU.
Yeah.
Are like 50. I think they're 53% internal combustion and 47% electric, and it's all about charging your battery and having some extra battery boost to give yourself some extra power down the straight. And I watched the race. I don't often, on recorded and fast forwarding between the good bits, which isn't much. And man, there were some scary things. There was a guy, it's a narrow track with walls either side, so there's nowhere to go if something goes wrong. And suddenly, some guy would suddenly lose 30, 40 kilometers an hour, 25 miles an hour. So if you're in a race situation and the guy suddenly slows down right in front of you, that can be so fucking dangerous. I mean, if we think about what happened to David Alonso in the Buriram Moto2 race, the engine cut out in front of him, boom, nasty. So why will 27 MotoGP be better than 26 F1? Because although the changes are big, they're not completely revolutionary. We've still got internal combustion engines. There's basically no change from that point of view. But when you're mixing electric and internal combustion engines, and with all the weird kind of concepts they've got behind the rules, I think F1 will probably sort it out because that's what engineers are for. But I don't think we're going into the sort of grey area that they are, Peter.
Yeah, there is no comparison really between the two, because in Formula 1, like you said, the change is so much that most of the dangerous thing we saw were shit going wrong, which doesn't tend to be all season, cannot be all season. They will fix that. The other part that I don't like is that it becomes more and more a game where teams, strategies in the pit lane, and riders have to choose when to use this button. But if you use it here, you cannot use it there, and so on, which makes it more of a game, which is probably interesting for a new generation. But I can only speak for myself. It's not the case. And the type of changes we have in MotoGP is not anything like that, nothing at all like that. We just have to pedal down a little bit on the tech regulation because we get too fast for most of the tracks. And safety, because whole shot devices, ride high devices. Whole shot devices is super dangerous. Ride high devices brings the field closer together, but that's what we wanted to see first, but for the wrong reason. So now you can't overtake anymore. I agree with all the changes we do for next year. So I can't see that turning into a catastrophe. There will be some manufacturers that have it better sorted than others, so that can be interesting first couple of races because it's a new era. But I don't see anything super shit show like last weekend with Formula 1. No.
Sure. Okay, next one. DJ Purchase. What is development going to look like this year for the manufacturers? Like, is this the 2020? Is what we've got now? Is the 2020 GP26 for the year with no upgrades, or will Ducati still push the development envelope, even though it's the last year of the thousands? Very quick answer to this. I mean, for sure, all the manufacturers want to move on to focusing on their 850s as quick as they can, but they can't forget that that they want to win this year's championship, as well. So, I think the bikes will develop the same as they did last year, which means not much, but there will be just tweaks here and there,
Yeah, it all depends on the resources you have. Obviously, in an ideal world, you push 100% with the bikes, and at the same time you develop 100% on the new bike. But yeah, some manufacturers probably can do that. I think Ducati can do that, but I think Yamaha cannot do that. Then these are the two extremes at the moment. So, but it makes a lot of sense. It depends. I mean, you cannot put energy in engines, which is beautiful because there is a new engine. So all your engine engineers have to work on the 850, have to do the simulations, the dynos, calculations. And they can, because this engine, if it's wrong, it's too late anyway to change anything on it. So, and all the rest you still learn, because if you're not Yamaha, you still on a V4, you just will have you will have a narrower bike. Some aerodynamic things, quite a lot will be new, but especially mid-corner, there will not probably so much dramatic changes in the influence that you can do with aerodynamics for mid-corner speed. So you still need to develop in that area. That doesn't change.
Yep. All right, next one, Wezo. It strikes me that you guys are the only MotoGP podcast that doesn't have advertisements, whatever you want to call them. Why is that? Not that I like ads, but my life would be much less enjoyable should you stop this pod. So I want you two to be well compensated for your insights.
Wow.
We don't have ads.
We are shit businessmen, is what he says. In a kind of, you guys suck.
But we don't have a clue when it comes to business.
Well, he's not far off.
Yeah. So funnily enough, we have actually got somebody that's kind of interested in sponsoring a couple of our shows. So we'd like adverts as long as they were with people we were happy to have. I'm trying to think, who wouldn't I take money from?
Now, the thing is, Matt, when we naively started with it, I had this naive in hindsight idea that, I mean, let's turn it around. If I was Brembo, Motul, Shui, whoever, I would say, that's an interesting group of people. There is 15,000 people that download this podcast, that listen to you guys for an hour. These are people that buy their helmets, buy the brake pads, buy the tires, change their own oil, probably do a track day. So if I was Öhlins, Motul, Brembo, I would be interested in sponsoring me. But they are not. They either don't find us, or the couple of people we spoke to were just not understanding what a podcast can be and the value of it. So either I overestimate the value of our little cult group that we have here, or we don't speak to the right people, or people even in our audience have some ideas how to do it. Because I know, Matt, we told each other not to do bullshit advertising. Well, it's not like we have a lot of choice now, but if, there will be, it has to be like a little bit logic. I would love to do Öhlins, Akrapovic, and all these manufacturers that we see in MotoGP and that we have a feeling with. And then we can make up something that is still really us and still put the product in a good position without talking bullshit. We can do that. But so far, we unfortunately don't need to do that. So, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
I wish tobacco cigarette advertising was still allowed, because I'd really like to say, I'd really like to say stuff like "Come to Marlborough Country." I'd really want to do that and sort of be puffing away here on my cigarette. Yeah, but sadly those days are no longer with us. All right,
but we might have to. I mean, you and me, we have to speak about upping maybe a little bit what we ask from our Patreon supporters with all the travel costs at the moment. It's going to be, it's getting a little bit difficult. So, but it will be, I would love to do it for a little money only. And then having people advertise, that will be the best thing in the world. But somehow they don't find us, we don't find them. And
I mean, if any of you listening are kind of super good businessmen that are good at selling stuff to people, by all means, kind of offer your services to find us some sponsors. Yeah, we'd be happy for that. All right, next question. Graham Norton. We've had Prince Harry so far, now Graham Norton. We've got so many celebrity-ish listeners. It's fantastic. So Graham says regarding Marc Marquez's fitness, any guesses on what percentage he is operating at the moment, and the length of time before he's back at 100% or close to it? I suppose the first part of the season his objective is to stay as close to the top of the championship as he can. What Mark damage when he got taken out at Mandalika last October was something that I've never heard of before. Generally, you get very used to.
He sounds like a doctor when he tells you, eh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
he is a doctor by now with all his injuries, in the past, and he picks up stuff.
His physio, Carlos J. Garcia, who's been his physio for like the last 7-8 years, says that Marc, he just sounds like a doctor when he talks about his physical stuff because he knows everything about the body that's important to him, and he knows the correct words. He knows what things different parts of the body do. So what he fractured at Mandalika was the coracoid process, which is at the front of your near the collarbone, at the front of your shoulder. And he said that he can't use the shoulder as he wants to. He cannot force the bike into corners with his shoulders. Because, I mean, these guys are turning an awful lot with their shoulders.
He especially depends a lot on forceful actions with the handlebars. His riding style is all about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he can't do that. So he's riding injured. He's kind of riding with one arm at the moment. Kind of. How long before it's fit? Who knows? I mean, shoulders take a long time. If you think back to various riders, shoulder injuries, they take a long time to sort. And the shoulder is so important to riding a motorcycle, especially for someone like Marquez.
It's interesting. We did the curbstones last week. And now I look back to this, I think back about the accident from Marc. It looked like he hurt his shoulder when he hit the curbs and got catapulted into the gravel. Look, what I remember from the crash when Bess rode into the back of him, it could have been that he heard it when he was hitting the curbs, the higher curbs as we have them at the moment. But I'm not...
I'll have a look at that. Yeah. I'll have a look at that. What, at Mandalika, when he crashed at Mandalika?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have a look at that.
We'll be like cynical and weird that if there is an injury that prevents him from doing more championship and riding very well, it's caused by somebody else. And he did 10 millions by himself and always walked away from it.
Yeah.
He had not a lot of crashes caused by other people. They didn't have a chance.
No, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, as for Marc is very used to coming back from injuries. You know, there's no one with very few people with more experience of doing that. So he knows it's 22 races, 22 weekends rather. And he's just got to keep near the front until he can, until he's back to normal. You know, who knows? No one knows when that will be. I think Brazil will be interesting because he's had a 2-week break, so he'll be able to concentrate on that a lot. And also, you think about that. You know, when he nearly crashed, when he had the tire blowout during the Buriram Grand Prix, that tank slapper. I mean, he was out the seat fighting the bike with left and right with his arms. That probably didn't do that shoulder injury any good at all. No. So, although you're hoping to take steps forward, things can happen that put you backwards as well. And also, we all know how happy he is to crash, finding the limit. He can't really do that anymore, So,
and if he can't do that, first of all, it's difficult for him to resist the urge. And secondly, when you do it, you don't walk away like you did when you were 17 and 18. He doesn't bounce so well as he used to do when he's younger. But before we think Marc is in all sorts of trouble, he was in a weekend where he was visibly sick all week in the race weekend. He should have got away with the second and the third place, which is still not bad for somebody struggling. So it's not like, who's going to be world champion? Not Marc. You still have to put a little bit of your money on him, I think.
Yeah. Okay, Duncan W. He asks, that's quite a long question, this. With the increasing complexity of MotoGP bikes with mass dampers, ride height devices, and a multitude of aero components, are the 2026 bikes still achieving the minimum weight limits? If so, surely 2027 is the time to reduce the minimum weight limit. Reduced weight removes the capacity for elaborate mechanisms, such as ride height devices. It will also reduce the amount of energy that needs to be dispersed in a crash. I think we are reducing the minimum weight by 3-4 kilos. Yeah. I mean, the main reason the minimum weight is so high, I think 157 kilos now, down to 153 or 154 next year, it is a cost thing. If they put the weight much lower, then suddenly making a light motorcycle costs an awful lot of money, not only in the materials that you have to use, although some lightweight materials are restricted, but also the design. It's just another whole part. You can't just design a part to do the job. You've got to design it and then redesign it multiple times to make it lighter and lighter and lighter, shaving off, a few grams here and a few grams there. So the main reason it's so high is a cost reason. But you are also correct that, the heavier the bike, the worst, the worse that bike will be in crashing, because not only will it go further, if it hits you, it will also hurt you more, and that is the one thing that all riders are aware of in a crash is, where is the bike? I need to get out of the way of the bike. Not that you have much choice, but and you think back to Marc Marquez breaking his right arm at Jerez in 2020, that was because the bike hit him,
Yeah, there was a lot of energy in that bike. When bikes start to tumble, that's when you need to be scared. As long as they slide, it's all okay. But when they get up and start to turn, it's just like a grenade without a pin. Yeah. They destroy themselves, but they can hit you.
Yeah. I mean, we're very lucky that because, the rider weighs half as much as the bike and sort of rolls and tumbles in a different way, that very rarely do the bike and rider go in the same direction at the same speed for the same distance. Because if they did, motorbike racing probably wouldn't even exist. It would be so dangerous. You'd be having riders killed left, right and center. You do not want 150 kilo thing to land on you.
No, especially not a spinning thing.
No, exactly.
It has some more energy.
Yeah. All right. Next question. RE865. Throughout the 2025 season, Pecco Bagnaia and others have attributed their troubles with the 25 Ducati to vagueness in the front under braking and corner entry. In 2026, especially during testing, there seems to be a consensus that the front feeling is improved. Ducati claims the main difference for 26 is a new ride height device. The ride height device doesn't operate under braking and corner entry, so what gives? I'll just start very quickly on this one. Well, the ride height device does have an effect during the braking phase. It's because although it was created for the acceleration phase, inevitably engineers realized that it could also help them in the braking phase. What's your take on it?
It does a lot, because you arrive with the bike that sits like a chopper. So the way the riders grab the brake has changed since the ride height devices. The Brembo engineers told me that riders grab the front brake, cannot grab it immediately at a handful, not like in a split second, because there is not a lot of load over the front height. You lock it. So you grab the brake, you feel the pitch, and as you feel the pitch happening under you, you get more and more and more brake pressure, and then the speed goes down, which means less air resistance, and you have to start opening the brake again. It's a constant pressure for the balance. But what has come to it with the ride height device is also your first initial braking cannot be super hard, but then it can be super hard for some time when the rear extends. Think about the rear ride height device as a extra long rebound movement that can be damped, that is damped. There is a hydraulic system in it, there is gas pressure in it. It's part of the whole bike setup, how quickly you want it to get out, to get up to, and if it has zero rebound speed, then it bounces to the back, and it's like having 20 millimeter preload on your shock spring, which is not very fantastic. It's a part of the whole game. So if you have it wrong, you are in trouble during the braking. But I still refuse to think that was the main thing that Pecco didn't get up to speed last year, because if it was, then it's more than a little bit painful and silly if that was the thing. So I don't think it is. I don't think it is. No.
I mean, if it was something that if they could have just fixed Pecco's problems by changing the ride height device, they would have done it. Which is why we always come back to that it had to be the engine. Although I can't remember whether I said last week, but when I was taking photos in pit lane during the morning warm up at Buriram. I don't know. Did I mention this in the last podcast?
No.
I don't know.
Go on.
I was outside the Ducati
picture on social with somebody looking.
I was outside the Ducati taking pictures of the bike. Because the pit walk in Sunday morning is quite a good time to take photos, because all the bikes, every factory has a bike out the front, every team has a bike out the front, or two bikes out the front. And David Tardosi came out going from the box to the pit wall and said, "You are wrong, you made a big mistake," and gave me a bit of a slap, which was quite weird. So he's obviously talking about, mine and Peter's, not just me, theory that it has to be the engine, that caused the vagueness. It's due to the as we've talked about many times. We're not going to go on about it much longer. It's the way that the inertia, the way the engine brake works, basically, and how that loads the front tire and all that kind of stuff. So even the engine character can affect the front end feel going to a corner. All right, on to the next question from 04 Jamal. Is it possible that David Alonso was another victim of the decision to abolish warm-up sessions for the less valuable lower classes? What Jamal is talking about is Senna Agius's bike cutting out on the third lap of the Moto2 race, and Alonso piling into the back of him and and then hit by another bike as well. He was lucky. The third lap, maybe. I mean, I still think that it is. I wouldn't say criminal, but that not having a warm-up session, 10 minutes for the Moto2, Moto3 classes it's an outrage. It's an outrage. Absolutely. It's a basic thing. All teams will strip down their motorcycles to a greater or lesser extent on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening. And you need to be able to run them for several laps at full speed to understand whether everything is working properly. So, was that a knock-on from the lack of warm-up? What happened to Agius and Alonso? We don't know. But I just, they just should have warm-up sessions. It is a basic safety procedure. Peter?
I'm afraid I don't agree completely here, Matt. It's Moto2 and Moto3. It's not a rocket. These are basically standard bikes with standard parts. You have loads of them. They're not very, very complicated. Shit can go wrong, but I see it as part of even the attraction from the mechanical side of things, that you always have a very clear plan of every part that is on your bike, every mileage from every quick shifter, from every cable, and with your mechanics that you are able to put the bike perfectly together. You can do some testing in front of the pit box, obviously, and then you have still 2 laps, which should not count for. You should really prepare it as if the next morning we have straight away the race, but you still go to the grid and you have then the warm-up lap. So I look at it from a different perspective. It's a challenge. You must do it. You can do it. Then try hard. Point. I don't want to, otherwise it's like, how to explain? I think this is doable for the technician. This must be doable. You must be able to do this. If you insist on renewing a wiring loom on Saturday night, you probably take a big risk. You shouldn't do that. It's another thing.
What happens if you crash the bike and you damage the wiring loom?
Make sure you have a wiring loom that was tested. It's one of the things you do during test in the winter and on 3-1.
Sure. Well, of course. But the problem is, a lot of Moto2, Moto3 teams, the vast majority of them, in fact, are understaffed, underfunded. So they might want to do a lot of things that they should do, but they can't afford to. They haven't got the staff. They're just a bit chaotic. They're just struggling to survive,
No, you're right. The second part of the season is when you see old exhausts coming back, old quick shifters coming back that earlier in the year, they had the mileage, but they never really stopped. So in the last 3 races, you don't want to see some of the bikes of the lesser funded teams. But still, it is a responsibility for the teams that can be met and should be met. I don't say I like a lottery. If you cannot change the racetrack from Saturday, Sunday, and only have a sighting lap and a warm-up lap, you can't do that. And if it's wet, certainly you need to have a couple of laps. But your responsibility to prepare the bike, that should be doable. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, obviously it should be doable.
Easy life for me. I'm not in the pit box. Maybe a couple of years ago I will say differently.
I just think it's a basic thing that you should have. The reason you have a warm up is not for performance; it's for a safety check, basically. So
bring on like a rolling dyno type of thing in the back of the paddock, where teams that are in doubt can go with the bikes to have whatever 20-30 minutes on the dyno, going through the gears, different loads. Then you see if something is there or not. Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't know. I just think I can go back to warm-ups. That's what that's me. All right, next question.
I used to love the warm-up, actually. So, I wanted to come back. I definitely.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 teams love the warm-up. They need it, especially when you're suffering.
Yeah. Okay, cross-eyed cat. We can cross-eyed cat. You get extra points. In fact, if you come up with a stupid username on our chat group. So cross-eyed cat asks, what do you think the actual chance of someone other than Marc Marquez winning the title are this year? We'll get rid of this question very quickly because we kind of already talked about Marc Marquez probably too much. Was race worrying for him, Ducati, or normal viewing will resume the next time out? As we just said, he if it wasn't for the blowout, he would have got a second and third, even though the bike wasn't great at Buriram because reduced grip since the tests, and also because his shoulder isn't up to it. So, to me, 100%, he's still 100% the favourite to win the championship.
And if not, it's basically himself that did it. He's his own biggest problem. Yeah. With his crashes.
Well, apart from the fact that his current injury wasn't his fault, as we already discussed. Yeah. All right. Okay. On to the next one. Wezo, I think we've already had a question from you, which is a bit cheeky because you're only meant to ask one. But anyway, since you brought up Formula One, could Liberty push MotoGP structure to be more like Formula One with constructors and engine producers? Could this work, or why wouldn't it? This is a very good question. So in Formula One, basically, you have a constructor like McLaren or most of the constructors don't make their own engines. Ferrari makes its own engines, but most of them, McLaren use, I don't even know. Do they use Mercedes engines? Are they McLaren? I think. We don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, most of the constructors don't use their own engines. Like, for example, Alfa Romeo use Honda, which has obviously got massive problems this year, which is, some people are saying, is this going to affect, while we're on the subject very quickly, Honda have got massive issues with their F1 engine at the moment. And people are saying, because HRC is now cars and bikes, never used to be until a few years ago, it always used to be just bikes. Now that HRC is cars and bikes, will this create a diversion of resources to Formula One, which is obviously a much bigger deal than MotoGP? And could that affect Honda's 2026 season, and even more its 2027 season? Could do. Who knows? Anyway, this has been mooted before, that we should have constructors buying engines from other people. I mean, King Kenny Roberts did it in the early 1990s. He was always saying, we need to be more like Formula One. We should have constructors, and he became one himself, building his own bikes, and engine suppliers. And it was him that negotiated with Yamaha in 1992 to make customer versions of its YZR 500 engine, which before then were only available to the big teams, sponsored by Marlboro, sponsored by Gauloises, sponsored by Lucky Strike, etc. So, I mean, I think Kenny was 100% right. He usually is. And I still think that would be a good way to go, to have, some teams doing their own thing from the chassis point of view, and then just using an engine. And maybe we'll go to that with Kalex and CF Motor.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I think it could work really well. Yeah. You agree?
Yep.
Well, you agree with me, Peter. Come on, this is no fun. All right, on to the next question. Mark Tucker, what is the scariest corner on this year's schedule? You start, Peter. Or do you want me to start? I've already got it written down.
Yeah. Okay, let's compare the notes. I think turn 1 in Phillip Island, I mentioned it, is not the easiest one. Yep. Then we have the Curvone in Misano, the super fast kink on the back straight, which is probably the biggest one. Probably that should be number 1.
Yes.
PI is a bit of a gambler, because some laps it can be easy and suddenly you're blown to the left or to the right. But if there is not wind, it's not that. But Curvone is really a big thing. And obviously we have the waterfall, the Waldman Curve in Sachsenring, where you always crash over a cold front tire on the right side and then don't stop tumbling. A little bit turn 9 in Austin is the end of all the S's from Sector 1. As the 4 last corner before you reach the Hab, which is
the fast left going down the hill.
Bumpy, fast left, and you need to take speed with you there, otherwise all that time is destroyed. It's quite a handful there, the bikes.
Yeah.
Where you came up with?
I would also add, not so much, but turn 1 at Le Mans. Super fast. It's like 160 miles an hour, so that's 250 Ks.
Yeah.
And also, it's complicated by the fact that it leads into another corner.
Yeah.
So, and then there's also not really, but the kink at Mugello, Used to be, the fast top speed kink before turn one, where literally they're going through a turn at
you
full
call
speed.
that a corner, yeah.
It's barely a corner.
Yeah. Barely a kink actually as well, yeah.
But I'd agree with your other suggestions. And the important thing about fast corners, what you have to remember is you can make much more time through a fast corner than you can through a slow corner. So it just so happens that the corners are the most scary because the only scary corners are fast corners. You don't get a scary slow corner. They're not scary. So it's kind of, it's a double whammy that the super fast corners are where you make the most time, therefore where you need to risk the most, but it's also where you're going to pay the most if you do crash. So that's a real big thing in racing, that those are the corners where you need to really risk it. And I think Cavoni at the end of the back straight at Misano is a good example. I mean, although it leads, we don't really have any super fast corners that lead onto straights, do we?
No.
They're all followed, because obviously if a super fast corner leads onto a straight, it becomes even more important. Yeah. Because if you carry an extra 2 kph through a corner, you're going to carry that extra down the next straight. So if you've got a half K straight after a super fast corner, that corner becomes even more important, and therefore even more important to take a big risk there. But yeah, good question. All right, where are we?
Eau Rouge, Francorchamps.
Yeah, I mean, if we go on to old circuits, man, we could be here all day.
One of the questions coming up.
We could be here all day just talking about scary corners on the Isle of Man TT, couldn't we? All right, next question. Chris Austin, given the long season, how many days testing do the manufacturers get to use the new 850s, and when can they start? Do concessions have a say, given it's a brand new power unit? I'll just quickly say my bit and then Peter. So basically, it's as usual. Manufacturers aren't limited by days of testing; they're limited by the number of tires they've got. So they're limited on Michelin's, but they're also limited on how many Pirellis they can use to develop the 850s. So yeah, I mean, I think as we're on recording this, I think Aprilia, KTM, and Yamaha are at Jerez, I think, with their 1000s and their 850s, presumably.
Yamaha with the 850.
I quite possibly, yeah. I'm not sure.
I hope so. But
yeah. The big thing is, as we said earlier, why it's important to stay with the same manufacturer for next year, really, if you can, is because the first time that official riders, current full-time riders, not test riders, can ride the 850s is at the Brno test in June, and then at the Red Bull Ring in September. So they get this year's riders, full-time riders, will get 3 days on the 850s this year. They'll get one at Brno in June, one at Red Bull Ring in September, and one at Valencia in November. So the importance of those 3 tests, those 3 days, is huge, Peter.
So imagine being KTM and having Dani Pedrosa and Paul Espargaro testing the new bikes.
Yeah.
How important is that? What a fucking advantage there. They're great. They're in great shape. And then being Yamaha with whoever, So what a difference. What a difference.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about KTM having the best test riders, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Espargaro, Paul Espargaro, and Dani Pedrosa. Yeah. But I mean, the other manufacturers have caught up a bit in the quality of their test riders. I mean, KTM have always had the best test team for a long, long time, haven't they? But at least the others are investing. So Honda have got Alish, Ducati. I mean, Ducati having Nicola Bulaga is kind of quite interesting, because he obviously knows the Pirellis well, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so I think that's enough on that. On to the next one. Connie Ornell from Sweden. Tyre options at the Tide. This is a very quick question to answer. Tyre options at the Tide GP. Everyone had a problem with the medium rear. Wasn't there an option for a hard rear? You get two options per race now, front and rear. Why is that? It's a cost thing, of course. The more tyres you have available at a race, different types. I mean, for the quality of racing, the more options you've got, the better. The best, what you really want in a race for have good racing is have 4 guys on the medium, 2 on the hard, 5 on the soft. So you've got all different tyre strategies, which will all have their sweet spot at different parts of the race. So you'll get lots of overtaking as one guy flies off with a soft at the beginning and then struggles later on and so on. But at the moment, only two. I'm not sure how many options Pirelli will have next year. You would hope 3, certainly in their first season.
Yeah. I can't remember that they mentioned it, but probably Connie also means another thing with this question, which also puzzles me every now and then. I think Michelin has a weird strategy in choosing the name for the tires on an event. We all know they have a couple of rears and a couple of front tires, and today's soft tire can be tomorrow's medium tire. That's okay with me, but they should just stick by saying one is soft, one is hard. Because what they do now is usually we have soft and medium, but when the tires, according to Michelin, are all very hard, they choose medium and hard. So there are events where you can choose a hard rear tire, and there are events where the hard is called medium, which is just super confusing. It doesn't make sense at all. So, the hard tire was not hard enough last weekend, but we just have two rear tires to choose from.
Sure. All right, next question, VJ. I really like this question. Right. I have seen theories of the Meredith effect from Aprilia's new aero on the internet. What is your take on that? This is super interesting because the Meredith effect, I'm going to read this straight off the internet because it's quite complicated. This is an aerodynamic phenomenon. So the Meredith effect is an aerodynamic phenomenon identified by F.W. Meredith in the 1930s, where drag from an aircraft's radiator is offset or converted into useful thrust by accelerating heated air through a specialized duct. Right. So this was first used to great effect in the Americans' P-51 Mustang fighter. So basically, that you got an air duct at the front of under the fuselage, air goes in there, and somehow through some sort of magic of physics, accelerating heated air through a specialized duct creates a low pressure, which gives a ramjet effect. So it actually increases your top speed, but this is very difficult to do on a motorbike. So you'd have to have a duct at the front of the bike, and then air goes in through there, goes through a radiator, which heats the air, and then it comes out, and therefore I'm fucking getting confused here because I can't explain really complicated technical things.
I'm not laughing.
But look, it just gives you it gives you maybe a mile an hour or 2 mile an hour advantage, and they use this in IndyCar racing a little bit. And Harley Davidson, when they were designing a World Superbike machine 25 years ago,
they were
used that as well in their designs. The bike was never built, but so this is a way. And obviously, the Aprilia. The reason this VJ is asking this is, are Aprilia using this? So the air coming in at the front of the fairing and then comes out by the rider's elbows. Is there a radiator somewhere in there between there that's heating that air to give the bike a little bit of a boost? Could be. I don't know. Because funnily enough, Romano Alberziano, who was Aprilia's chief engineer, told me a few years ago that he really wanted to use the Meredith effect on a motorcycle, on a MotoGP bike, but he just hadn't worked out a way. So it could be. There could be part of the radiator or something somewhere in that system that is doing exactly that. Peter?
Wow. Yeah, I'm the first to say I don't understand enough about it to make a clear statement and say this is how it works.
You mean I didn't explain it to you?
Yeah, well, I just want to add something to your explanation because fortunately you also don't claim that you're perfectly sure what it exactly does. The situation with motorbikes is that you create, it's quite a lot of drag you can create with your radiator behind the front wheel. That's why 125s and Moto3s, when you needed to put tape on it, that felt like a stupid thing to do, to put tape on your radiator, because that makes even more air resistant, but otherwise your engine would stay too cold. You better want to have a different air radiator or water radiator size for every temperature. So you create, depending on the speed, there is it's like an air resistance, the front of your radiator. But we all know that to make the radiator work effectively, you don't need so much to put more air in front with force against it. You want to suck it out quickly on the exit of it. That's why Ducati's fairings were also super aero and super weird for the bike on the first GP bikes they made. They made super smooth side fairings without any openings because that was good for reducing drag. but the riders would cook themselves because you couldn't. The whole thing got too hot. What I think they're doing now is making an exit on a clever place on the side of the fairing that starts to work at a certain airspeed that passes over it. That starts to really suck air out of it.
Yeah.
And what you do then is also guiding hot air in another direction in corners than you do it on the straight. And hot air is faster air, which can, if you funnel it correctly and point it to the right place, can even reduce the drag of the bike. There's so much different priorities going on the bike. You need to cool them down a little bit. You want to have less air resistance in the end of fourth gear and fifth and sixth, where you don't really so much anymore. But you want to have downforce under acceleration. You want to have ground effect with mid-corner. And all these things can disturb each other hugely. And then there's a rider moving left and right over it, how he feels. Good luck with that. But Aprilia, if there's one company you can trust with aero, it's them. I love that they're doing the next step in movable aero. Obviously, it's movable aero, but it's a human, so you can't. As long as the human don't need to go with his hand somewhere in the fairing and change a lever and then have different aero, that's definitely not possible. But he sits where he normally also sits with his arm, so perfect. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's a clever system. All right, Andrew F., can you visualize for us the uniqueness of the 2020 season when all riders will presumably be on factory spec bikes rather than the usual mix of new and year-old bikes? Luca Marini's told us recently, like next year 2027 will be the most important year to be on a factory bike, because although all the bikes will start the same, the factory bikes will have more updates. You know, that's just, well, they'll get them sooner. And because the bikes are completely new, the updates might be more significant than they are now. We're at the tail end of regulations that have basically been the same for, I know we went from 800s to thousands.
No, but this is another level.
But basically, you know, the MotoGP bikes have basically been the same for 10, 15 years. You know, the most significant thing that happened in the last 10, 15 years is the change of tires, you know, whereas next year we've got everything. So I think the bikes will change quite a bit during the year, and the factory bikes will probably always be one step ahead of the other ones, or often be one step ahead of the other ones.
I was going to not agree with you, which nobody will surprise, but maybe I agree, only for another reason. I was not going to agree with you because factories like data. They can't develop without data. Having more bikes with the same specs on the bikes will give you more data. At the same time, an update is never 100% sure thing, unless you replace something that broke with something that's stronger. Then you don't really need to test it. You just put it on. Look at Zarco last year. He was fast on the old spec Honda, fastest Honda, and then he became the slowest Honda when he got the new Honda too, all the updates. So it makes sense sometimes for a manufacturer to not have all the bikes on the latest spec.
Yeah.
But
yeah, true.
Yeah, so just for that reason. But generally, my first thing would be, no, it makes more sense to have everybody quickly on the same package and start work with that.
Yeah. All right, John Chavez, what's really happening at Yamaha? Incompetence, lack of corporate support? I don't. What do you think, Peter?
I wrote a note here that says this must have consequences. That's wherever it comes from. It's hard to believe this is not going to have consequences for Yamaha's racing project. This lack, that what we see is such an incredible lack of progress. We don't. That's my only, but also my super big worry. The lack of progress that we see from Yamaha's side. Whether that is incompetence, hard to believe. There's so many competent people in that group. So somewhere, somehow, is a huge bottleneck, probably with a Kirk in it, and that's getting harder and harder to explain. So somebody, I can only repeat myself. This must have consequences at some point.
Yeah. I mean, you know, although they had a pretty disastrous first race of 2026, you know, we are only at the first race, and they are expecting an engine upgrade not for a long time, until Le Mans. That's what Quartararo told us. But which makes me think that it will be a major upgrade rather than just, you know, minor internal tweaks. To me, if it's taking that long, I would hope that it's going to be a significant upgrade, let's say.
Yeah.
And it's probably then where we should really start judging them.
Yeah.
You know, if they make their first significant upgrade during the bike's first full season with the proper riders on it, not test riders, and that's still wrong, then wow, yeah. But I think let's wait until then before we really cast judgment on Yamaha. That would be my feeling.
I'm a bit harsher here because Sepang is already a proper test with track which has everything in it, and there they looked bad as well. Obviously, this weekend was super bad on this rear tire. If you have no mechanical grip and no engine, you don't need to go to Buriram at all. So from now on, if we don't have that tire, they will look better. But it's will they don't find it. They're not going to find a second.
No, sure. But I mean, Jack Miller said that the bike kind of handles all right. You know, he's changes direction well. The way you can brake is much better than it was on the inline 4.
Yeah, I suppose that's why you build a V4 all along.
Exactly.
Except you don't have the acceleration from a V4, and you have the downside from no corner speed because it goes wide. It has understeer. And now you start to solve a problem that everybody else solved 5 years or 7 years ago already on the V4. So, not everybody. KTM just recently solved it. But still, you need to be able to stop and accelerate with the V4. You need that by power and mechanical grip and the layout of your engine as well, the firing order, the whole thing. And they're so far away from every advantage you should have with the V4 that you only have the downside. The downside
but
from a new bike.
I still think we should give them a little bit longer before we pass judgment. I'm nice like that. All right, Patrick Parkinson, which track is next up on Liberty's, or should we say MotoGP Sport and Entertainment Group's chopping block? I would say, well, we're obviously talking about this because of them chopping Phillip Island, getting rid of Phillip Island. I'd say Aragon, Peter, Portimao, you know,
because of lack of attendance.
Yes, I mean especially
the
Aragon.
Are on both places for everybody. That's not the problem.
Well, for the teams,
and for
but
the media,
the whole thing with Liberty. It's all about improving the fan experience. You know, that's what they want to do. So, which is why they love city races in Formula One and why they want to get us closer to cities in MotoGP. Because if you are right next to a great city, you can have a much better weekend. Well, this is the way Liberty look at it. You can have a much better weekend if the track's right outside of the city and you can say, oh, let's go into Barcelona. Like for Barcelona, for example, you know, you can watch the race and in the evening you can go into Barcelona and hang out in nice bars and go to nice restaurants or do whatever. You know, you can, you know, if your girlfriend or boyfriend wants to go to an art gallery or whatever, you know what I mean? They're kind of, that's the way they're looking at it. They're kind of beyond the like sitting in a tent in a field and watching the racing and getting pissed in the evening and waking up watching the race. You know, that's not Liberty's concept of where MotoGP needs to be, you know.
Okay, right, then that leaves us, what about Silverstone? Are you in trouble?
No, absolutely. Absolutely, I would think so, yeah.
Balaton? Yeah. I can get rid of Balaton tomorrow.
Yeah, oh God, please.
Not a Silverstone. I love Silverstone, watching it on television.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they need to get a bigger crowd at Silverstone. You know, otherwise it could be for the chop. You know, I mean, that's the thing. Formula One nearly left Silverstone for many, many years. Eccleston screwed their balls, really. Bernie Eccleston, who ran F1 for many, many years. But now it's like a hugely successful event. They get over 400,000 people per weekend there. You know. Largely because Formula One is kind of a British sport. Most of the constructors are British. A lot of the top riders are British. You know, it's kind of the UK to Formula One is what Spain and Italy are to MotoGP. You know, but I would say Aragon because small attendance, middle of nowhere. Portimao, smallish attendance,
middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere. I mean, geopolitically or geographically is what I'm trying to say.
But they're beautiful tracks.
No, absolutely. Yeah, but this is not Liberty's concern. No. Liberty's concern is not the quality of the racetrack.
No, we learned that.
Yeah, all right, George Decker.
He must be Dutch. There is no more Dutch name more Dutch than this name. Yeah. He could be my neighbor.
Was Desmond Decker the the musician, was he Dutch? Sorry,
Becker is definitely Dutch. The first name is a bit adventurous for a Dutchie, but the
possibly
family
Swedish
name
or something.
is definitely
So anyway,
Dutch.
His question or her question is, since they are removing ride height devices next year, the acceleration phase out of the corners before long straights will be more challenging. A lot, maybe even most of the riders on the grid have never ridden a MotoGP bike without the devices. How fast will they adjust to this? And will older riders like Jack Miller and Maverick Vinales have an advantage regarding this? No, I don't think so at all. I think riders adapt to that kind of thing very quickly. We will see the way the riders will have to move around the bikes a lot more than they have done. Just like in the old days, the bikes will be more challenging to ride. I think the riders are going to love it. Yeah. The riders want to ride the bikes. They don't want the bikes to ride themselves.
There's two names that I immediately see having a huge advantage here on the exit. This is obviously Marc, but also Jorge Martin. Jorge Martin's way where he's used to sit on the Ducati on the exit of the corners was so nice. He was basically on one wheel all the way. The front wheel was there a little bit every now and then just to support him, but he was putting everything on one wheel. Not too much, but just enough. The way he moved his body, where he puts it, and how he controlled the cars was quite special in his Ducati time. Yeah, he will quickly understand that again. That's a basic skill set of riders to pick up in a couple of laps what is needed to do here. And then if you don't have that, then you're not the talent we're looking for.
Question for Chris Turner, which we can get rid of really quickly. Why have Yamaha chosen to develop a V4000 when we are changing to 850 for next season? Wouldn't they be better concentrating all their efforts on the new bike? I asked the new Yamaha race boss Paolo Pavesio about this back in January, I think, and he said Yamaha just would not accept to basically go racing under different rules from what everybody else is racing. So, and you can kind of see the point. Everybody else is racing thousands with ride heights, and Yamaha would be racing an 850 without ride height. I just think from the kind of corporate decision level, they would just go, we aren't doing that. Peter?
No, agree.
Okay, cool. Onto the next question, which is from Senna's caress. I assume that means as in being caressed by Ayrton Senna. And if it is, then that's the best
they won.
Patreon supporter name of all time. We get a special prize for being called Senna's caress. Anyway, so he any more news whispers about the brewing tension between MotoGP Sport and Entertainment and Liberty on one side and the manufacturers and teams on the other regarding the Concord type agreement that they need to reach. He's referring to what Adam Wheeler wrote about in Motorsport magazine last week. So basically this is a new, every 5 years, the rights holders, which used to be Dorna and is now Smeg and Liberty, and the manufacturers and teams have to come up with an agreement. Who's going to get paid what? What do the teams and manufacturers have to give to the championship, and what do the championship have to give to the teams and manufacturers? So obviously it's always it's a business battle basically. And there's always a bit of a battle. I went to see, and the manufacturers are using Lynn Jarvis. They are Lynn Jarvis, former Yamaha boss, is now a sort of free agent, and he is now working for the manufacturers as a whole, basically trying to make a deal with Liberty and Smeg. I wouldn't want to deal with Lynn Jarvis because he's a pretty canny operator. I went to see him at Valencia last year to ask him what was going on, and he just looked me in the eye and said, "There is no war between the two parties." I went, "All right, Lynn, calm down." What do you think, Peter? Have you heard anything about what's going on?
No.
Okay, that's easy. I mean, I heard, for example, Liberty / Smeg want every team to have a running show bike for each rider, which would require every team, so they can have, let's say it's the Silverstone Grand Prix, and they can have an event in London on the Wednesday where they close off part of London and they have maybe test riders or whatever doing wheelie, or maybe Johan Zarco doing wheelies up and down the road on his Castrol Honda, and Miller doing stoppies on his Pramac Yamaha. So they want a running show bike for every rider. That's a lot of money, because it's not only in the motorbikes. There'll be last year's bikes, of course, but you need a crew to look after them. You don't just press a starter button and, they need, there's a considerable cost attached to running that, isn't there? So it's these kind of things that they're negotiating on.
It's what Ducati brings all the time already for years to the paddock, and then have it on exhibition there, the two-seaters, Yeah, well, depends on what it brings. It's cool or it's bad. Depends on what it brings for the teams. So At the moment, they get I think Dorna is just paying a certain fixed amount of fee to the team. So you can do your homework, you know what's coming, and you know what you spent, and in between is your win. And probably, from what I heard now, it's going to be a flexible thing, depending on the outcome of the whole show, which sounds like a crap deal, because then you're depending on other people's decisions, your income, a lot more. Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, obviously, we have factory teams and we have independent teams, and the way they're Dorna, Liberty, Smeg, whatever you want to call them, put a lot of money into the independent teams, not the factory teams. And from next year, all the teams are going to be considered the same. They want it the same as Formula One. So all the constructors are on an equal playing field in theory. And I kind of quite agree with that, because the more confusion you can take out of these things, if you want to sell the sport to a wider audience, you have to make it as less confusing as possible.
Well,
and in Formula One, the money that each team gets from Liberty is completely based on, I think it's public knowledge. If you win the Constructors' Championship, you get this much. If you finish second, you get this much, all the way down to 11th. I think there's 11 teams in Formula One. So your income is related to how well you do, which I think isn't that fair, because the richest teams will probably do the best, and then they get the most money, right? So that sort of cements their position at the top. And then the poorest team finishes last.
That's your whole economic system you're explaining now.
Exactly. We're going into socialism and capitalism and everything. How's the poor little team at the bottom have any chance of catching the guys at the front if it keeps getting shit money? Yeah, we're getting into politics here. So let's and funny enough, when things like Moto2 arrived 15, 16 years ago, there were some riders who were saying, this is socialism. We don't want this in racing. It's socialism, having everybody on the same stuff, So, yeah. I mean, like any system, you want a balance that kind of works for everyone,
Yeah. No, amen. Correct.
Okay, cool. All right. Mike R. Again, another easy question. Are all Ducati riders on identical bikes this year? And are there still big differences between the works teams and the satellites? Ducati this year have 4 riders on GP26s, which is both Marquez brothers, Pecco Bagnaia and Fabio Di Giannantonio, and therefore Fermin Aldeguer and Franco Morbidelli on last year's. And the differences between the works teams and the satellites has never been smaller. Never in the history of racing. Is that enough on that one?
Yeah, also because some of the satellite riders, not Franco Morbidelli, but Fermin Aldeguer, for example, are already full factory riders that are it's like a learning year for them. It's like factory teams. Yeah. Otherwise, you need to pay the rider 1 year. You need to buy him from another manufacturer 2 years later. It's better to have him now already on your side and have him fixed in his contract. If he gets as good as you think he is, you already have him. So.
Yeah, that's why Ducati signed Aldeguer before even the start of his last season in Moto2, because they knew if they didn't get in there, somebody else would. All right, next question. Giorgio Theophanopoulos. He said, no need to try to pronounce my name. Well, that's my best shot, Giorgio. After just one race, what percentage would you assign to Marquez's chances to win the title? We've already had that, actually. I think he's looking at betting on it. He said the betting market translates to something like 60-65% for Marc and 30-35% for Bezzecchi. What percentage would you assign to each of those riders? I would go 80% Marc, 20% Bezzecchi. You, Peter?
Yeah, and that Bezzecchi is probably not Bezzecchi, can be somebody else.
Jorge Martin, for example.
Yeah, Alex. Yeah. Because Bezzecchi does a lot of things to destroy his chances so far. And not saying, the timing of the crashes was because you don't have many of weekends. I hope he doesn't have many weekends like he had last weekend in Buriram, where everything seems to be going for you. And then troubling all. I know it's a sprint, it's only half, but it really wasn't necessary. No.
Yeah, well, Peter's referring to Bezzecchi crashing 3 times on Saturday, which is, not if you're trying to win a world championship, that's not really what you want to do. Although Marc Marquez did pretty well at it, so who knows? Maybe he was just trying to sort of copy Marc Marquez, but crashing out the race was
exactly.
not the
That's exactly what Marc did not do usually.
Yeah, exactly. BBTM says, after this first MotoGP weekend, shouldn't Aprilia be more focused on keeping Jorge Martin instead of signing Pecco Bagnaia? Yes, I guess so. But again, it's only the first weekend. I think Bagnaia. What happens to Bagnaia this year in his performance is going to be super interesting. I think he will be better than he was at Buriram at the coming races.
Yeah, but my notes here says Pecco is losing rapidly value.
Yeah, absolutely,
rapidly.
Yeah.
So
sure, yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about everybody signing everybody so early in the season. It means basically you've got to get out there, and if you don't perform well in the first 2-3 races, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You know, we've never had a season like that before. Right. The next question is sort of the similar thing. Julian Botting, rumor has it that Jorge Martin is signed for Yamaha. Is this a mistake given the lack of progress before? Well, yeah. I mean, you know, the thing is, riders sign. They try to sign with the best bike. They also try to sign for the best money. You know, Martin is already, I'm not saying this is how he's thinking, but, you know, this thinking does come in. I once asked Kevin Schwantz, before he won the title, the MotoGP title in 93, what's the most important thing to you, winning the MotoGP title or making the most money you can? He said, making the most money I can. You know, because you're a racer for until you're 30, 35 or whatever, and then you've got 30, 40 years of your life to live, you know? What you want is 10 million in the bank, not 50
so
grand.
So disappointing, this, Matt.
Well, but you know,
but at least we didn't see it in Kevin's riding. He was giving it all and some.
Exactly. Kenny Roberts, who was MotoGP champion in 1978, 79, 1980, once said that somebody said, it's a great phrase. He said, 10 cents and a world championship won't buy you a cup of coffee. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, but then again, that's an extreme opposite. But, you know, look at what Marc Marquez did, asking Honda, please, can I leave this super fortunate contract and go ride for free somewhere else and maybe see if I'm still competitive. Yeah. That's the spirit. Especially when you have already enough of the millions and can never...
when you've got 100 million in the bank, it's kind of easy to do
How much money do you need? And again, we are in politics and we are in socialism. How much money do you need when you're 35?
I don't know. I mean, you know, these people that they want as much as they can get. But I mean, the thing is that the money is an important consideration.
But it's also an ego thing, and I think they all know more or less each other's money, salaries, the riders, and so it's Fabio Quartararo's only, like, I don't know how to say it in English, but the only good thing from. That gives him some statue in the paddock. Everybody knows he's super, super good. And everybody knows he earns a lot of money. So it's okay. It's only Yamaha that screws him up. Otherwise, he was double screwed, you know?
Yeah. But it's you're right. It's bragging rights. You know, every rider wants to make more money than the others.
Can you believe Jorge Martin? It's one of the contracts that is still not... I mean, it's considered really true that he went there. I was expecting him at Honda, but Honda could get Fabio, which is the better deal. But I would have both. Because the way Jorge Martin can ride a bike, probably more chance of being successful on a Honda than Fabio. But then we've never seen Fabio on any other bike. So if he really ends up in Yamaha. But there would be some justification in it, the way he treated Aprilia since he came there, the way he sabotaged his career last year and usually looked at Aprilia for reasons. And then try to walk away from them while still having a contract. If he ends up in Yamaha, there is a God. But I don't wish him bad.
But this also might be another reason why Aprilia don't want him.
Yeah.
You know, they
defend him publicly, but they must hate him because he does everything wrong.
Yeah, the people that fund Aprilia are Piaggio, you know, and if the CEO of Piaggio, who's probably earns more money than any MotoGP rider, if he decides that Jorge Martin disrespected him last year, then he will go, we don't want him.
And then you also look at the salary. Jorge didn't came cheap. They had to dig extra deep when they had him on the plate, offered in Mugello last year because Marc forced everybody in another position.
Yeah, well, Massimo Rivola, the Aprilia boss, had to ring up you know, the CEO of Piaggio and saying, can I have another X million pounds? You know, so that's what I'm saying. The CEO of Piaget will go, well, hang on, I went extra deep to help you out, and now you've screwed me over.
The guy
so
just walks away and doesn't give any results and goes to another manufacturer. Wait a minute.
Exactly. Okay, next question. Mark Lepresto. I noticed these guys don't use hydration bladders anymore. They have the sort of hydration, a litre or half a litre of fluid in their hump. I think they still do. I think they've just got so...
They're getting less or zero, yeah. It's actually a good note.
Good question. Yeah, I kind of thought...
It made me wonder, and I contacted somebody who's doing more or less that stuff in the paddock, and he told me, no, they less and less, almost nobody's using it anymore. It for two reasons. It gives a lot of... in the reality, it was often quite a hassle. The connectors didn't work, the hose came loose, it started leaking inside, and then in the end, it's 400 gram. So riders want to take out all the weight, and it's only 40 minutes that riders have to be on top of their game as an athlete in soaring heat. But 40 minutes you can do probably without extra hydration and stuff. If you have the whole, and also if you have the last hours up to the race prepared very well, you should be able to do.
Yeah. But it's not just hydration. It's also the dryness in your mouth and everything, which can be really ugly, But also, if you're relying on that hydration source to be able to suck and get some fluid into you, and then it doesn't work, that's going to fuck with you, right? It's just going to be like, oh, fuck, it's not working. You know what I mean? So that's not going to be helpful. All right. Timur Murzam, sorry if I've murdered your name. If the 2027 rules manage to slow down corner speeds, what tracks, locations would you like to see return to the MotoGP calendar? Peter, I know your first one.
If the 2027 rules manage to slow down corner speed, well, they don't. That's not going to bring corner speed down.
But he's just asking that question, so just go with it.
Which tracks and location would you like to see return to the MotoGP calendar? Well, one we just... Phillip Island must come back. Monza must come back for the heck of it, for the fun. Monza, no, we can't go to Monza.
Yeah, Monza.
No. I don't know. Maybe you have a better idea.
I'm just going to go into fantasy. Here. Yeah, I'm going to go into fantasy world here. I'd want Suzuka back, and I'd want Spa-Francorchamps back. The two greatest racetracks in the world, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Suzuka, super fast. I mean, if you watch the 8-hour race or the Formula 1 race, you can just see what a just
but super fast in a good way. Monza is even faster, but in a shit way, because Monza is just a couple of chicanes connected by a super long straight. So it's so fast that it's funny, but you shouldn't race there. But Suzuka is average fast, but it's super technical, Lots of fast sweeping left, right. You can't see where you're going. Super fast. That's really, it's like an extended Phillip Island in a way. So with more height difference. So lovely.
I mean, to me, Suzuka's way better than Phillip Island because it's just got so much more. I mean, 19 corners, I think, it's, and just a wonderful variety of corners. Spa-Francorchamps, I mean, just the best racetrack ever.
Sounds like you rode there and you have some good memories from it.
Yeah, I love the place. Right, next question. Guy Anderson. Hi, Guy. Given the new 850s will not be so over square as the current thousands, will they be less peaky than the horrible 800s? In theory, yes. And the significant thing here is the 800s, which were around from 2007 to 2011, were very peaky, and that required an awful lot of electronics. And it also kind of made them one-line motorcycles. You couldn't use torque. You couldn't square off a corner and use torque to get out. So there was only one way of riding them. So they became very one-line, which is one reason why we saw no overtaking, very little overtaking. So the idea of the 850s is to, by going less over square, is to make them more torquey so that they won't have the same problem as the 800s. Is that correct, Peter?
Yeah, more or less. You forgot one thing, the front tire, the Bridgestone. That, in my humble opinion, was the main culprit for having boring races, bringing a super, super, super front tire. But anyway, the 850s not being over square, that acts like a rev limiter a little bit, which is also a good thing. But picky engines, honestly, are not really such a problem anymore nowadays. Since we have torque by wire and we have all the options in the gearboxes to use for, I don't think it's something that really plays a role with the new bikes. Going to play a role. I don't think so. The reason they did it is to reduce the need for super revs. Because if you bring a super bore with a short stroke, you need to do 25,000 RPM to get any power from it, and then you're back to square one. Yeah.
Yeah, and also that if you want to reduce engine usage, then the fewer revs you have, the better. Okay, next question from Benny. Do you think the cost of the MotoGP Video Pass and or TNT, which is the British broadcast of MotoGP, at over £200 a year for the Video Pass or £30 a month for TNT, is prohibitive to expanding the viewership in the UK, especially? I mean, this is just business. You can either set up your price of your product super low and sell more of them, or you can set it higher and sell fewer but make as much or more money. And it's just a balance of all Liberty care about, any Dorna, Smeg, Liberty, all they care about is making money.
With the TV rights, that's the biggest income for them.
With everything, with everything, yeah. Everything.
But it's also a gamble, like you started with explaining the gamble. Because if you go for low price and have a high quality, that's probably less of a gamble, because then for years, you will have a lot. If you ask the maximum, you need to be sure you give a maximum show, which you can never be sure, and somebody else's game will not step up like cycling or Formula 1 and probably bring a better show, because then you're fucked. So, yeah. I feel sorry if you live in a country and that's your situation. I'm happy to pay my MotoGP pass because I need to. I'm a professional and it's worth every penny for me because I'm on that page every day. But if not, will be hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Video Pass, you've got 22 race weekends, so that's £10 a race weekend. To me, that doesn't seem
But being able to go
extreme.
back to 1 year, 5 years ago, see every practice session, every qualifying session. I look at races from onboard cameras from another angle in last year's race and so on. But you need to be a freak like me to make sure to not even blink with your eyes for this money. If it's just one of your hobbies, I can imagine it's probably on the limit.
Yeah. I mean, there's a similar sort of issue between having free-to-air coverage and having pay TV. And everything is pay TV. So if you are Liberty, you can put it free-to-air and increase the viewership, and everybody's watching it. Like in the UK, for example, when the BBC were free-to-air, we had audiences of over 1 million per race. And I'm not sure what it is with TNT now, but maybe 200,000-300,000. I'm not sure. So the theory of putting free to air, you got millions of people watching, and therefore you get more sponsorship money coming in and blah, blah, blah. So you make your money that way. But that's a big if, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you really going to get, just because you got more people watching it, that doesn't mean that you're going to have more sponsorship money coming in. Whereas if you do pay-per-view, if Liberty do pay-per-view deals with broadcasters, then they know that money is coming in. So that's a big thing. I mean, like I say, this is a business, and the people in charge, they want to make money, and that's why they want good racing and everything. Not particularly because they want good racing, because they think if there's good racing, more people will watch it and they'll make more money. So it's all about money. And do you make more money by selling it cheap and selling more, or by selling it more expensively and making more profit per person? It's just a business deal, really. That's all. Right, where are we?
Where we are is more or less in the middle of our total list, Matt, and we are on 1.5 hour. So we're not going to make it unless we're going to do.
We'll do another 10 minutes or so. I think. Do another 10, 15, 20 minutes. Okay, Paulo Cruz says, considering that from 2027 the bikes will probably be 2 to 3 seconds a lap slower, will the current lap records exist forever, or will in each track in 27 have new track records? The track record won't change. Well, it shouldn't, because the track record is the track record, and obviously then it's just a side issue. This is a new record for the 850s, but the track record won't change. We don't know how much slower the bikes will be. Fuck, they might even be faster. We don't know. I mean, they should,
for
in
example,
theory,
which is only corners. If they have the arrow on the side correctly with a lighter bike, there's no reason they should be 3 seconds off the pace in Saxering. The Moto2 is close to MotoGP, so
yeah. No, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how their speed does compare to the thousands. But if they are 2 seconds off, how long will it take them to dig away at that gap? It might be within 5 years, they might be going, quite probably will be going faster than the thousands. And so then we'll be down to 600s.
Yeah. Yeah, it all depends on Pirelli, basically. That's the main factor.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew Evans, do Smeg need to homologate, I think this is a bit of a joke, stronger shoulders to go with the stronger wheel rims to prevent injuries like Marquez's bounce over the curb in Indonesia last year, shoulders, injuries are kind of interesting. They kind of depend a lot on how 10, 20 years ago, you used to get a huge amount of guys injuring their fingers and their hands. And that was because the bikes were leaning quite a lot, but when they were going around the corners, if they lost the front, your inside hand would go thwack down on the asphalt and quite possibly have the handlebar come down on top of it. So a lot of riders were getting injured. Whereas now,
so it tucked in the front. Now they don't always tuck in when you lose the front. It can just slide away from you. It can understeer. Sure. When it tucks in, you can be between it. Yeah.
No, I mean when the front tucks and then you go off the side. The thing is now the bikes is generally when they're leaning over so far, the rider's already on the ground. Yeah. You know, his legs on the ground, his elbows on the ground, his shoulders pretty much on the ground. So they barely fall off anymore. You know what I mean?
Thinking
about it,
they
just slide off. They just let go of the bike and off it goes.
Even with the high sides now, this is a bit of wild tour, but now it comes up to me. Even with high sides now, and when they hurt themselves, it's usually not so much the high side itself or the crash itself that did the damage. It's hitting something afterwards, which is usually the curb, because everything else is usually out of your way. You damage yourself when you hurt something during the sliding. The impact from getting down on the ground after a high side, we don't have many high sides at all. There is not a lot of impact. And when there is a high side now, then it's a huge impact. But somehow with the airbox now, because the airbag's going really deep in the ladders, really low and everywhere. But the elbows are sticking out. You have to break something in the end, Matt. You have to hurt something if you keep falling out.
No, exactly. Yeah, that energy's got to be absorbed somewhere.
And like you said, shoulders are quite complicated. So once it's damaged, you can carry that with you.
Yeah. And despite airbags and everything else, you know, if you land heavily on your shoulder, from 2 meters in the air at 100 miles an hour, you're going to hurt your shoulder. You know, simple as that. All right. So Knud Jensen, don't know how to pronounce your name, sorry. F1 has one advantage over MotoGP. At least some of the drivers speak English. How do we get more British riders into MotoGP? By changing BSB to Moto2, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'd say there's various reasons why we don't have any or many British riders in MotoGP, depending on what class you're looking at. The main thing is money. Motorbikes are not a big thing in Britain. No one wants to spend any money on them. How many British teams are there in Grand Prix racing compared to how many Italian and Spanish teams there are in MotoGP in the Grand Prix paddock?
But at the same time, it's a motorsport country. You guys race everything that has an engine and wheels.
Yeah, but not motorbikes. No one cares.
Jesus.
There's no sponsorship.
What am I supposed to say living in Holland? We don't even have a national championship. We have a hobby race championship.
Sure.
You guys have a proper BSB where something is happening.
Yeah. No, I mean, we are a motorsport country, but motorbikes get very little money.
I tell you what BSB, you need, Matt. We need climate change.
Yeah, no, exactly.
that will do the job.
Bring it on.
But you guys love bikes more than you probably want to say here. You love bikes. You respect bikes. There's lots of tracks. It's in your DNA, but it's just not in your weather situation to do it. Practice it enough.
But, you know, it's less so now. But when I was, it was quite normal some years ago to you know, you'd be riding along on your motorbike. You think you want to stop for a coffee or go to a pub or whatever, and on the window of the pub or the door it said no leather jacket, no bikers. You know, because they thought we were trouble. You know, and that mindset still exists. You know. The other thing is the tracks. You think of British Superbike Championship. We go to Alton Park. We go to Brands Hatch. We go to Cadwell, which are all beautiful, beautiful tracks, but they're dangerous. And if you grow up riding at those tracks, you have to ride with that danger in mind. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. So you might be riding 95%, 96%. You go to a MotoGP track, you go to any track in Spain, pretty much any track in Italy, you can ride that thing. Well, you have to ride it at
over
100%.
The limits. Yeah.
So if you spent the formative years of your career riding at 95, 96%. When you come out into MotoGP or even and everybody else is riding 100%, it's not easy to flick that switch.
Yeah, if these formative years were from 6 to 10, you still have a chance. But when they're from 16 to 20, it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, guys.
Tamur Mazam, what happened to the shoulder cam? It was amazing, blah, blah, blah. Well, basically, you saw too much. All the manufacturers would have gone like,
sure
whoa.
Yeah.
There's no way we want you to see what our rider's doing and how he's doing this and what he's doing that.
Exactly,
Simple as that. They were fantastic, but they gave away too many secrets. Paul lost year. Your thoughts on the Moto3 changes, spec engine and chassis? I hope they are able to filter down to national championships and we can see the return of the wild card. This is a big thing. Back in 125, 250, 500 days, especially, when you had 125, 250, 500 Grand Prix and you had 125, 250, 500 national championships, you could have a rider. You had the British Grand Prix and you'd have a 250 rider who was, say, leading the 250 championship come and do a wild card. And they were fantastic days. I mean, the same used to happen in World Superbike. But that just barely happens anymore because you just don't have, in most countries, obviously in Spain, you have a very good Moto3, Moto2 championship. But in most countries, you don't really have a strong Moto2, Moto3 championship. So you just don't get that crossover. I mean, if they go to a spec engine, R7 engine, and a spec chassis, it's still going to be expensive, for a national team. I mean, imagine being a Dutch, or a British Moto3 rider or whatever. They're just not going to have the money.
No.
Not going to have the money.
The current latest rumor I heard is indeed R7 engine from Yamaha, but some Spanish chassis manufacturer will make the spec chassis, and I forgot the name because it didn't ring also any bells. It's probably some manufacturer that makes some junior bikes or whatever, but apparently it's already pretty far. It's going to be spec chassis from Spain with the Yamaha engine.
Okay.
And it's going to be cheaper, but not cheap enough to have a national series in every country.
A spec chassis from Spain? Who's going to build that?
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering. I hate myself for forgetting the name and looking it up.
Could that possibly be because the people that own the championship? Well,
man,
I know they're American, but
you see the conspiracies everywhere.
Oh, come on, man. Jesus. I mean, yeah. Jobs for the boys.
But this
all right.
It needs to be cheap. And then I can, anyway, let's not talk too early. Let's see what comes first.
Let's go back to 125s, 250s. They were cheap.
Yeah, 2 strokes are the best.
Yeah. There you go. Next question.
Vegetarian.
Vegetarian. No, I don't know. If you could kick 3 tracks off the current calendar and replace them with any circuit from history or state, which would you bring in and why? Well, I would get rid of Valencia, Hungary, and Balaton. Valencia, Hungary, and Misano.
You would get rid of Misano?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's a shit track.
No.
Or at least turn it around the right way.
Yeah, you're right there. Yeah,
it's a rubbish track. It's a rubbish track. All the corners tighten up instead of open out, and no, I don't like it.
So what would you bring back, Matt?
Well, we've already kind of talked about this. I would, again, with not caring for riders whether they live or die, I would bring back Suzuka, Spa, and Salzburg Ring, which was just an awesome track down a valley in near Salzburg, funnily enough, in Austria. Super fast. The start finish straight was in the base of the valley, and you went along, and then there was a little chicane, and then down to a slow right at the end, and then you came back up the side of the valley, and they were just doing 180 miles an hour, nearly 300 Ks between with the mountain on one side and the Armco on the guardrail on the other, and we used to climb up. Me and Michael Scott, journalist colleague, we used to climb up the bank. Pretty much the only people they stopped. It was pretty difficult to climb up this bank, and you'd literally just be hanging on the Armco as the guys went past, like 2-3 meters away, in groups of 2 or 3
or whatever.
And you'd nearly the air would hit you and nearly knock you down the mountain. They were shifting so much air; it was just awesome. You don't get anything like that anymore. Sadly, I'm sounding like an old man. And you, Peter?
No, Francorchamps. Phillip Island, Suzuka, the usual. What can you expect?
Yeah.
But there's definitely a trend. There is definitely a trend because it's the old Francorchamps or the old Brno and the old Spielberg ring, like you mentioned. They once started as roads connected with each other, and somewhere there was a paddock. And then things got faster, and they shortened it a little bit. They shortened it some more, then they made it wider. Then they removed the Armco, and so this is a process that has continued for many, many years. But I hope that the organizers think really cleverly now for the next couple of steps. Otherwise, we end up with just a lot of Valencias, which is not great for racing. There must be it must be possible to find a way in giving entertaining tracks that reward the brave and especially the skilled riders in a way that is still safe enough. But safety is an issue. We don't expect,
of course,
we don't accept that people. We love Formula One and MotoGP because it's so dangerous, and these guys have so much skills, and they have big balls and they're very skillful, and they do brave things. But when stuff goes wrong and somebody doesn't move after a crash, we all hate the sport and cry for more safety. But when you get all the safety you want, you don't have the sport anymore. So be careful what you wish for.
It's a tricky balance, exactly. and one of the issues coming up is that more and more people at the top of racing have less and less to do with racing. You know what I mean? They're not former racers, they're not racing people, they're business people. They've come in to make money. And obviously that Liberty barely know anything about motorbikes, barely know anything about motorbike racing. Wasn't it Loris Capirossi winning his first 125 GP on the Salzburg ring, on the old super dangerous track where you just spoke about? He's now one of the riders' safety representative. He homologates the tracks. So he's seen a lot. He wasn't scared then, not at all. But he was 50. No. Well, and the weird thing is that sort of interviewing people like Mick Doohan, Wayne Rainey, Kevin Schwantz, who were around, at the time when Salzburg Ring was there, and then it was taken off the championship in the calendar in '94, I think, and quite rightly, sadly, but rightly. And you speak to those guys now, and they all will say that was their favorite racetrack.
Well, there you go.
Because
there you go.
It gave them the biggest buzz, but they didn't want to race there, but it was their favorite racetrack. And that's the kind of weird sort of thing that you're considering. And just talking about Liberty, it's all about. Of course, and Dorna were the same. It's all about money. It's they want it to be good to make money. But I remember watching the last F1 race. The end of last season, when it was the three-way title fight between three drivers, and Alain Prost, former 3-4 times world champion, Formula One champion, they were asking me about what was going to happen in the race, and he went blah blah blah, and then he said in the end anyway, this isn't really about sport anymore. It's about marketing and business, and that's just the way it is. Right, we must be getting near to the end.
Yeah, well, let's now do the full 2 hours. We are now on 1 hour 45 minutes. Let's continue. Let's set a new record here of 2 hours.
All right, okay. All right, I'm up for that.
That's you to keep on talking, telling me in the beginning. We might need to stop a bit early for my sore throat. And we are on 1 hour 45. Good job, Perlman.
Yeah. I think we're actually only on 1 hour 30 because we pressed the record.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah,
and
true.
Just talked shit for 15 minutes before we started.
Lawrence Peeney is
next question. Lawrence Peeney. Hey LP, how you doing? Did we see the best version of Alex Marquez in 2025, or is there more to come? I think he's been hit by the thing that we always talk about. When you're riding a year-old bike and there's no upgrades or anything possible.
Perfect. It's not often
and you just
the case.
focus on yourself. You focus on yourself. You go out and you do laps and laps and laps. Now he's got a factory bike. It's like, oh, try this. Why don't you try that next session? Next time you go out and try this. And suddenly you're no longer focusing on yourself anymore. Peter.
Yeah, not long enough. And then to really understand the limits of the bike, you need to spend more than 3 corners or 3 laps with that bike. You need to do a lot of laps. Like Troy Bayliss used to say 1,000 years ago, please don't even change my gearing on the bike because I love the way the bike reacts. Now I understand completely and I know what it's going to do. I prefer a wrong final gear ratio, but I have a bike that all the limit, I know exactly when it's going to go front, when it's going to go rear and so on. That's an extreme example, but even the MotoGP gods, they need, if they're not Marc Marquez, they need quite a couple of laps to feel comfortable at the limit and understands exactly where the limit is. And if you keep changing that bikes every 5 minutes by putting aero and stuff on it, you might miss easily the chance of having the perfect bike because at that moment he wasn't used to the limit. Or you give somebody something that's unbelievably good, and the next update comes and it's bad, and you nearly die, and you lose the confidence. You need another weekend, and so on and so on. So it's always, and that brings me back to this fascinating part of the game, the human factor and the crew chief and the guys who decide when to put what on the bike. That's probably one of the most underrated and at the same time important decisions crew chiefs make. When you put what on the bike, this is everything. This is everything. I was so happy I was laughing when I spoke to Phil Moron in Sepang after the first day with Brad Binder on the bike. They didn't change anything because he was there to bring Brad back to his confidence. And more or less, he says something like there were already loads of parts in the back of the box that the KTM wanted him to try testing. No. Let's first do enough laps on the bike without changing too much until we have a solid base to put some changes on. But it's so important when you put on a change, do it on the right moment. When it works, give a rider a couple of laps or whatever sessions to get used to the new platform where he operates at. Then put in the next option. It's so easy to miss a golden opportunity or have a destroyed rider by throwing in too quickly all the parts. Riders are not computers. They are not.
No, exactly. So I mean, we'll see over the next races how Alex goes. But for sure, being a factory rider, kind of in a way isn't all it's cracked up to be, right? Okay, next question, John Ivey. Please comment on the likelihood that Yamaha will bring an engine with a substantial increase in horsepower, either at next upgrade or later in the season. I think we already touched that. We're expecting something, according to Quartararo, at Le Mans, and I would think that it must be a substantial upgrade.
You think or you don't think?
I could be wrong.
I don't think it's
going
to
be. Because it's going to it's taking so long.
Yeah.
They can't just be fucking, porting the cylinder head, can they? I mean, it must be something more than that, surely,
but I'm quite negative at the moment in my expectations for Yamaha. That's because I feel sad. It's not because I don't care for them or hate them. Because I just feel sad. Such a manufacturer, such a history, such a beautiful bike usually, and the superstar rider on it. That's going to probably waste another year of his career. So I feel sad for the situation. Yeah.
David Trustram, fuel and oil. We are all petrol heads. So how has fuel blend changed over history of Grand Prix, going from crazy jungle juice to what is now so-called more sustainable? Peter,
don't look at me.
What do you know?
I was never choosing this. I don't really keep up a lot with the fuel. As long as I don't get signals that there's a lot going on in that area and it's very important. Sorry to the people that I disappoint, but I don't.
I think the biggest change happened in the 90s when basically you could run rocket fuel.
Yeah.
And I can remember teams, when they were dispensing fuel from the barrels in the truck, into the jugs to put into the fuel tank, they would all be wearing breathing apparatus and everything. You do not breathe that fuel because it's going to rot your brain, so that was super, super toxic. And then in 98, they went to unleaded fuel, 1998.
That's when
which was a lot softer.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was lower octane. And I think basically it had to be essentially pump fuel. I mean, it wasn't pump fuel, but the spec, kind of spec of the fuel, the RON and all that kind of stuff was basically the same as pump fuel. Largely from a safety point of view, from not only from a pollution point of view, but also for safety for mechanics and stuff. If you're in the garage all day, 3-4 months a year breathing in those fumes, it's going to destroy you. So that's why they went to that much unleaded lower grade petrol. And then obviously we're now on 40% sustainable, so-called sustainable. And from 2027, it's 100% non-fossil fuel. I don't really know a lot about petrol, but I'm quite cynical about all this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not fossil, which is good, but this is seriously nasty chemicals, right? It might not come out the ground as a fuel.
It's still not growing in your garden.
No. It's going to be vicious, nasty stuff, and it's taking a lot of vicious, nasty chemicals to make this stuff. I mean, I'm quite green in many ways, but I'm in love with the most ungreen sport in the world. So, I'm completely compromised.
And I love the smell of fuel. I love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I remember I went to the Honda Thanks Day at Motegi, November 29, end of the season, when Cal Crutchlow got to ride Eddie Lawson's 1989 NSR 500, and they had one of Senna's 88 or 89 McLaren Hondas there. And I was in the garage while they were warming it up. Oh my God, it was so cool. It just sounded so good. And the smell was crazy. I could feel, if you've ever had super strong alcohol like poachine, the Irish potato alcohol, you can actually feel it kind of dissolving your brain as you drink it. You can feel, and the fumes from Senna's car were the same. You actually felt high. You breathed in a couple of breaths of that fuel and you felt high, dangerous stuff, man. But I can remember when I was racing 250s a million years ago, going to a private airport every week to buy loads of aviation fuel, because that's what we used. You take 5 jerry cans, and it was 105 octane or something. It was heavy stuff. All right. Ted Lumpkin, he says, where is the racecraft? Oh, this is referring to, we're back to Acosta versus Marquez. This is so Peter and I can have another argument. Where is the racecraft? Pedro Acosta was leading Marc Marquez with a lap and a half to go. He's been racing motorcycles probably since he was 4. I can't believe he left the door open for Marquez of all people. Racecraft 101 says Acosta should have hugged the inside line to make his bike as wide as possible. Yeah, well, I mean, this is motorbike racing. Yeah, you want to, if you're coming out to the last corner or any corner and you want to stop the guy coming past, you go to the inside to try and stop him coming up the inside. But if you go too far to the inside, you're going to be super slow into and through the corner, and this guy's going to have you on the way out. It's always everything in racing. It's a balance. I mean, what I think Acosta should have done is what Andrea Dovizioso used to do Marc Marquez all the time, and what Marc Marquez did to Dovizioso at that exact spot many years ago.
If it was a last lap, it was not the last lap.
No, but you could still do the same thing on the penultimate lap. You let the guy, you lift up, you let the guy come through, because he's going to go wide, and then you just undercut him and beat him to the line, or overtake him again. I mean, I think Acosta, I think he will learn that to do the undercut, because you do have to learn
so
to do
late.
it.
That's the difference when I watch the videos. Mark came from super far, which should not make it impossible, but he was very, very late under Pedro, and then it was too late to do the undercut. I don't think Acosta is yet cunning and smart enough to force the contact to make sure I have it. That would be a Marc Marquez move. He didn't do that, but there was contact. And he was even surprised to was given the place back, because Marc stayed inside the white lines, but Marc forced somebody out, and it was not the last lap point. And you shouldn't be able to win a position. And it's not like Marc got killed afterwards. You just had to give one position back. If it was last lap, Pedro probably would have done more Gonzalez style and don't go completely on the outside there during the braking area. But we will never know. We will never know. Yeah. Now Pedro was cool about it because it was only the sprint, and he's just happy to be there. He can't believe his luck to be fighting with Marc Marquez until the last lap on this track. But when we are over half the season and points and positions in championship are at stake, he will be less lighthearted about the same thing happening. I tell you that.
Yeah, for sure.
Can't wait to see them in the same team. Rumors had it.
Oof. No. It's if that happens in 2027, if they are together, that's going to be pretty cool. Right, John Carlberg, are MotoGP bikes naturally aspirated, or do they have some kind of boost? They're fully naturally aspirated, and have been since the 1940s. In the 1930s,
there we go.
Here comes History Channel. Just a quick one. In the 1930s, everyone was using supercharging. BMW were using it to win Grand Prix. NSU were using it. Gilera were using it. It was the big thing. But when racing restarted after the Second World War and the World Championship started in 1949, they banned supercharging because the world was in a bit of a mess and they wanted to reduce costs. Yeah, anything to add?
Funny, they were interesting because there were lots of used superchargers for sale everywhere, from Spitfires and Messerschmitts that had come down, because all these aeroplane engines had this compressor stuff and so on at the time. No, but I get it. And we still have a little bit of a boost, but that comes from the high speed we have in the airbox. That's a small thing. Actually, it's a small thing, but it still can fuck up the efficiency of your engine. It sounds like a gift, going 300 km/h, having overpressure in your airbox, so you have more air coming into your engine, but that's not automatically the case, because it's a bit of a war zone. Speaking of war, it's a bit of a war zone inside the airbox where the pressure waves bouncing left and back and forwards and upwards and can really disturb another, and then you end up with less efficiency from your pumping than you would have otherwise. So airbox design is still one of the very, very important things at the moment, where they can gain and lose a lot.
Yeah, and Ducati seem to have improved their power a bit this year, and they say they've done it all through the airbox. So there you go. Marcus W, he's basically asking who will finish last in this year's MotoGP Championship.
Yeah, taking out the wild card riders. Now you're looking at me. Oh, yeah, I tell you, there's going to be a close call between Miller and Rins, probably, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's hard. Think about it.
Well, and Top Rack, I think. Yeah, I think it'll probably be a Yamaha, let's say that. Yeah. All right. Matt, is there any info filtering through about how the Pirellis are faring on MotoGP bikes? I've raced on Pirellis and they are very soft, even for punter club racers like me. I would expect they would need to be stiffened significantly to handle the loads generated by a MotoGP bike. Any thoughts about this? I'll just very quickly, I asked Romano Albeziano, the Honda tech chief, at the end of last year, whether he thought, having tested with the Pirellis a couple of times already, they would have the same DNA. And he said he thinks, he's not sure, but he thinks yes. But beyond that, riders and engineers are basically banned from saying anything about the Pirellis at the moment.
Yeah, there will be less load on it, obviously, than we have now with the ride-high devices and all the aero and so. But still, I'm convinced it will have, because history has shown manufacturers make stuff in a certain way, have all the know-how learned over the years in a certain way. There will be the same DNA in the bike, in the tire in this case, which is something to look forward for. Because to summarize, the DNA of the Pirelli is super grippy, but it also loses its grip, and not like a cliff, but it does lose grip over the laps, which is perfect, because I like to see riders fighting it in the last couple of laps with tires that are not as bad as in Buriram, but definitely not longer completely there. And then without ride-high devices, we will see who finds the better traction.
Yeah. And also the other DNA of Pirellis is that the excellent feel.
The feedback they get. You can crash, but you really want to.
Which is super important. All right, RE865. Just watched some highlights of the Formula One race from Albert Park. How can they possibly make that course suitable for MotoGP bikes? Some parts they are shooting through narrow tunnels, turning at high speed. Well, fine. MotoGP is not going to Albert Park. It's going to Adelaide. And B, they are going through barriers all the time at Albert Park, but those barriers aren't there normally. They're put in there for the race. If you go onto Google Maps and have a look at Albert Park and zoom in as close as you can get, you'll see that there aren't any barriers anywhere normally. And when there was first talk of going to a street track to replace Phillip Island, we all assumed that it meant Albert Park. And you could actually build quite a nice racetrack in Albert Park because it's huge, using those roads. You could. Whereas where they're going in Adelaide, it's a tiny little park and it's going to be Balaton, basically.
Yeah, because to make that safe enough, because I still have to assume that it will be safe enough. They're not stupid. Sure. So then it's going to be boring, quite likely. So let's wait and see. Some people I know say that it's not going to happen, that it's all just a cover up to get out of
Phillip Island.
Okay.
Go to the bend outside Adelaide. But that would have been, to go from Phillip Island to the bend would have been tricky because it's from one short circuit to another. But to say, the reason we're doing it isn't because we don't want to be there, it's because we want to go to a street track. So we'll see. All right, Michael Phillip. how is Liberty going to get bums on seats when F1 is advertising 5 weeks out on TV? And TV media are all over F1. Motorbike companies would rather pull fingernails than advertise at the track or to their customers. And the only media we get from MotoGP is rider crashes. I mean, this is the big question. Will Liberty be able to do to MotoGP what they did to Formula One? I have my doubts. Peter?
Yeah, I'm wondering as well. The hope I have is the French organizer who makes it a real event instead of a MotoGP race. And he gives people an event from 4 or 5 days, which is a reason to go there and camp and stay there and have fun. For just a MotoGP race, look at Aragon. That's not enough. That's just not enough.
No.
So
no. Yeah, I would really like to get the CEO of Liberty Media and take them for a wander through the Le Mans campsite 10 o'clock on a Sunday night or 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning and see what they make of it, because that kind of customer is not the kind of person they're looking at for MotoGP fans.
There we are, Matt. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Liberty is interested in making money, and that comes mostly from TV rights. And they go to tracks where they make a deal with the organizer, and the organizer's profit is that he has enough people sit on the seats. It also looks a little bit better on television, but that's more or less the organizer's problem.
Yeah. So what Liberty have done is they make an awful lot of money out of hospitality packages now, VIP packages. Instead of spending £200.
Yeah, and for that you don't need a beautiful track.
£3,000.
You need a beautiful paddock that's big enough.
Exactly. So they're doing VIP packages. They're doing deals with hotel chains. They're doing, it's all this leveraging people's interest in the championship to make money in all different ways. So, of course, the more people that are interested that get into it, the more money you can charge for a ticket, the more money you can charge for TV rights, and so on and so forth. So it's an ever building thing. But so at Le Mans they get that huge, fantastic. I mean, I love it. I love all that stuff. I love super civilized entertainment. Going out to a nice dinner or whatever. And I also love super uncivilized entertainment, which is like going mad in the Le Mans campsite. I think they're both. But how much money do Liberty or Le Mans make out of those fans that are there for all those days?
Well, the organizer, clearly. The organizer, because it's full.
Well, they bought a ticket, but how much money are they spending? They will be living cheaply, right? And I'm 100% fine by that. I think that's awesome. They turn up with a van. So what else
do you need than sell tickets as an organizer from a racetrack? And the rest is the area, the local governments are very happy with people on campsites buying the booze in the bars and staying in hotels. Yeah. So everybody wins. Yeah.
But these are not big spending customers. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They want people coming in spending £3,000-4,000 each for a VIP hospitality ticket, So, these people at Le Mans, love them to bits. They're turning up in a van with a couple of bites to burn, a couple of old shitters in the back of they're going to set fire to over the weekend. And some beer and some food, you know what I mean? These are, most motorbike fans are not super wealthy, they're working class, kind of
Formula One
normal
fans,
kind of guys.
People who go to, we have this race in Zandvoort, this Formula One event, which is one of the worst tracks in the world, but it's sold out because we have Max Verstappen and it's called Formula One. So everybody goes there. They go pretty far to make sure everybody can visit that track. These are all normal people that come to watch what they normally see on television and what they are told to be is the biggest show on earth. And then they're just sitting there all day on the grandstand watching Max win or not win or whatever, I'm still puzzled by this phenomenon. And we have an organizer that comes from that world, goes to MotoGP. So I'm a little bit worried, But anyway, we see.
Yeah, we will see. Next question, Archangel. Some time has passed since BMW bought Suzuki's MotoGP data. What's the full story? Well, I wrote something about that a couple of years ago, and you get tip-offs from people, and you believe some people, you don't believe other people. 99.9% BMW are not coming to MotoGP. I just don't see it, Peter.
No, they're BMW, so they're you can't trust them. They can come in there with 100 million and buy every man and his dog and then leave after 3 years with 0 points or success. You don't know. They can stay for 10 years. You don't know. That's been, look at the history how they did World Superbike, how they did Formula One. In a way, it's a very unreliable company, but if they want, they can do something. Since I live in North Europe, I regularly, even if I don't fish for it, I still hear stuff that has to do with that. And my understanding is, yes, there was Suzuki info available inside BMW. And yes, they were really, really, really close to doing it. But it's BMW, so in the end, it can still be a no. And it was a no. And I don't see them coming back on these steps. There were also, or rumors had it, that's one of the reasons they didn't do it, is they had 1 or 2 quite fucking expensive recall actions with their products in some countries that can cost you easily more than a couple of years MotoGP cost. So that also is why Suzuki went out more or less, in my opinion. They also had to do with not probably
with the diesel gate.
Yeah, exactly, with Toyota and so on and so on. So you never know.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these, like we were saying earlier, a lot of these decisions are made by people right at the very top of these companies that aren't looking at the whole thing the way we do, and they will be making decisions for reasons that we haven't even dreamed of.
But they don't need to go MotoGP racing to sell their motorbikes. Every man and his dog has a BMW. Some people have an RT, which have a bad taste. The good people have a GS. But but the sports bikes are the most looked, the bike you see the most on track days and in hobby racing, but almost one of the most used bikes is the BMW, and it wins 0. Yeah. When it's not Toprak on top of it, it doesn't win anything. But still, they are there. They make the products are not so bad, and then it sort of sells itself. So they don't need the advertisement to convince people our bike is good. Because when they go racing, it's usually not great, but the product is usually not so bad.
Cool. Kleber33, with the rumors that Moto2 will use a R7 engine, do you think there is a chance MotoGP will ever be 3 or 2 cylinders only? And as a little sidetrack, could you explain briefly the positives and negatives of 4, 3, 2 and monocylinder engines from a racing point of view? Peter?
I'm going to read my notes. Torque by wire has changed the perception for the riders. Firing orders are creating feel. Power band is your challenge. But remember that current MotoGP bikes are already, depending where we are on the track, a 2-cylinder, a 3-cylinder, or a 4-cylinder. So it is indeed also not as much as Formula 1, but it's a power unit where with all the electronics we try to control that power and use the type of power for the circumstances that we are in. Whether we are mid-corner or fully accelerating or in the end of Mugello Straight, we have already a different engine. Weird enough.
Yeah, what Peter's talking about is the electronics of the motorcycle will decide how many throttle bodies are opening. Yeah. So, you've got 4 cylinders with 4 throttle bodies. If at a certain point of the racetrack, it'll work better as a twin or a 3. Your electronics shut down 1 or 2 of the throttle bodies. Easy. I don't think... looking at how many cylinders... Of course, the number of cylinders does change the motorcycle. I don't see MotoGP ever going to twins or singles or anything. It's just
because then suddenly you need a turbo and so on it to make power and whatever. Why you want to do that?
No, fewer cylinders doesn't mean cheaper. That's for sure.
But the 1-cylinder racing, the sound of singles in the past was brilliant. It was very, very entertaining and brilliant. But that is something that belonged to that time.
Also, multi-cylinder engines sound better generally. You got more of a scream to them,
Yeah, 2 and 3 cylinders have a beautiful, different, very distinctive sound. The experience. Now we're going to bits. I love personally 2-cylinder, but probably because I grew up with 2 cylinders. But I can enjoy a lot the sound of a 3-cylinder. That's really screaming. I love that. The rasp.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Andreas Reinacher. First of all, your podcast is a real treat. almost as good and sometimes better than the races themselves.
Send in the money.
Send me the money. My question, predicting race results, sprint or main race, which figures, apart from the starting grid, of course, are the most meaningful for estimating race results? Basically, Andreas is after our info to try and help him bet on the outcome of races, which is fair enough. So he says, assuming you've got access to the MotoGP.com website. Well, first of all the results are all available free on the MotoGP.com website.
Good point, mate.
You have to pay for the TV. You don't have to pay. So you can go in there after every session and look at FP1. Friday afternoon, you've got analysis of every single lap, every single sector.
With every tire they were using and how many laps was done on that tire. Now, this will bring you to the point.
I mean, apart from grid positions, I would say the most important session from predicting the racing point of view is Saturday morning session now. I mean, it used to be FP4, which used to be the Saturday afternoon free practice session where everybody would go out and do kind of short race simulations. So you could that's when you really got an idea of what a rider's actual race pace was, as opposed to his time attack. So, I mean, would you agree with that
100%.
Saturday morning session?
100%. It depends where you are. If you're still struggling, then even Saturday morning, you make big changes, and because you're in Q1 and you don't have the lap time, so you're still working on bike setup, then it's difficult to read. But the perfect situation, example, Marco Bezzecchi last week, already in 3-1, it was becoming clear, was not difficult to predict, okay, that's the man. Whatever tire he was putting on it, he was so easily, I mean, even his bad laps were super, super good compared to everybody else. If you start a weekend like that, you can only lose it from there on. And they never lost the plot. He never hurt himself in the crash, and it was clear. It was painfully clear that the bike, that he could do lap times with 10 laps on the tire that other people didn't do with a new tire. So that was clear.
Yeah. Okay, TV Room Raccoon, another great name tag. Last year, you described Jorge Martin as an alien-level rider.
That was
However,
me.
in the post-Buriram episode, Peter said that none of Aprilia's 4 riders can be considered an alien or a really special rider.
Shit.
What changed? This is for you, Peter.
How can I get out of this? Yeah, well, we saw another side of Jorge ever since, showing he's not the complete package. I mean, what he did last year is just a book. Somebody should write a book about Jorge Martin at some point, especially last year. So I had to backpedal on my setting on my saying that he is like an alien, but still in the right environment, which is more or less for everybody the case. But you see what Alex Marquez could do in the right environment, but you also see what he does now in the right environment. I still think that Jorge Martin in the right environment is very close to the aliens and better than everybody behind them. But that's the right environment. That means a lot of stars has to be in line, which in Pramac they were all the time, we realize now. He doesn't have the best people around him for advice, I'm afraid, his management group or whatever. But yeah, to go back a couple of questions earlier, Aprilia could do worse than sign him again, probably for less money, but he could almost do not worse than going to Yamaha. So it's also in his interest to stay in Aprilia. So, see.
Yeah. Next question we've kind of already answered. John Ivey asking about the negotiations between Liberty Stroke MotoGP Sports Entertainment Group and the factory. So we've answered that one. Next is Paul Duig, who says, could you please explain what happens to the engines on bikes that are supplied to satellite teams? For example, Franco Morbidelli is currently riding a 25 spec Ducati. Does his bike use older reconditioned engines, or does he have a fresh engine allocation that is simply built to a previous specification? I assume the engines are new, but I'd love to understand how this actually works in practice.
Yeah, they must be new. If you want to do the mileage, you've got only a couple of engines for the year. I can't believe they're using...
Are we 7 engines now? I can't remember. 7 engines for the year?
6 or 7,
like
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, it has to be new. It has to be new. Obviously, it has to be built exactly to that spec and so on and so on. But I assume everything is new. Maybe 1 or 2 really unimportant parts are not. But if I was Ducati, I wouldn't take a risk with parts and then find out that it's throwing oil all over the track at some point, your Ducati engine. You don't want that.
No, the factories go racing to look good, and there's nothing that will make you look worse than an engine blowing up, smoke and oil everywhere. So yeah, everything's got to be new. Steve Ham, do you think the Maverick Vinales Jorge Lorenzo marriage will last past the summer break? This is referring to obviously 3 times MotoGP king Jorge Lorenzo, kind of basically taking Vinales under his wing to kind of extract the maximum from him, which he's never really done on a kind of consistent basis. And obviously the first round was a bit of a disaster. Vinales nowhere. What do you think, Peter?
It's interesting because what Lorenzo does is going to the track and then using all his experience, which is a lot, and all his contact to help him in the weekend. And at home, he's giving him the treatment that his father gave to him when he was young by doing 10,000 laps on an old car park behind the Aldi with shitty tires. Yeah. It worked for him, so it must work for the new generation. I don't know. They definitely set the trend. But you know Vinales. You never know what's the next move's going to be. So if the results don't come for too long, he's always in trouble with every man in his dog. And that can be the manufacturer, it can be the manager, it can be whatever. This is Maverick. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But,
I mean, it's, to me, one of the interesting things of this year is can you teach an old dog new tricks, basically, which is what Jorge Lorenzo is trying to do to Vinales, And if you could, that would be super interesting.
Well,
if Lorenzo did actually manage to change him, that would be amazing.
Well, teach new tricks.
I think it will be.
You help him with your advice during the weekend, because a rider also already has to take in a lot and should not look outside his own bubble and his own world for even more answers. But if you have a really good first best mate that walks around and speaks to every man in his dog and is on the track and speaks with the engineers, this can be a big help. It's like an extension. In a good relation, it's an extension of the crew chief, which can be good. And on the other hand, you train in a way at home that keeps all your nerves and your systems completely sharp on the top of the game where it needs to be. So, yeah, logic. For me, it's completely logic. Some riders have more they need more help than others. Marc Marquez never really needed this because he found out himself. But Maverick never been very stable in his head. So he benefits more from somebody that brings stability and some solutions.
Yeah. But I think it eventually just comes down to the rider, to the human character, and it's very difficult to change somebody's character, very, not impossible, but very, very difficult. All right. I think we should do one more question and then call it quits because we've been going a long time, if anybody's still listening. Right. Final question. Gaz GT, should Fabio Quartararo have had a performance clause in his contract where he could have gotten out if the bike was rubbish? Well, I mean, performance clauses exist in most contracts, but where would he go if he decides he wants to leave after 3 races? Where would he go? No other team can take him. Okay, he could go and ride as a test rider for a factory or whatever. But basically, he's. Yeah, it's depressing for him if the bike doesn't get better, but he's just got to suck it up. That's your job. You've got to ride what you're given and get the best out of it.
Yeah.
And count, like we always say, check your bank balance every week if you need cheering up.
Yeah, that's it. Looking back with the information at that time, I don't blame him for signing for Yamaha for a super amount of money when Max Bartolini comes in and they promise a V4. It did make sense. So, but now he's super disappointed because it doesn't turn out to work anywhere close to good. So, no, but he's nowhere to go. And also, he's the reference. So, the bike's crap because Fabio Quartararo, even Fabio cannot be fast with it. So, you are the reference yourself. Hey, but remember, he had some red sectors in Q1 in Buriram. So, I love the guy for that. He closed the visor and he goes all out with it. So, in a way, you always have a clear measurement guy on your bike to where the bike is, even if he cries for left and right and up and down. If the bike is 1/10 faster, he will go 1/10 faster. Love that. Yeah. But it's a bit sad to see him losing another year. I mean, that's sad.
Yeah, definitely. But as we always say, it was his choice. So let's not cry too much for him. Yeah, and once again, finally, before we go, we're 1 race in. We've got 21 to go, assuming Qatar happens at some point of the season. So, a lot can change. Let's hope it does. All right, there you go. Lap record. I think we're probably been going about 2 hours and 10 minutes. So if you've made it to the end. That's the guy
who said, I probably do 45 minutes and then I have to call it quit.
Or I've been chewing gum to kind of keep things going. So, chewing gum and picking my nose. So there you go. Keeps me happy. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you have got this far, if you want to help us, go to oxybomb.com and hit the Patreon button and find out how to help us. It's only a few quid or a few euros a month.
Or even with professional advice about how to make millions with this podcast in less than the couple of grand we do now.
If you want to get Rolls-Royce, I mean, I'd quite happily be sponsored by Rolls-Royce or pretty much anyone really. there are a few companies that we did have interest from, and that I thought just sounds a little bit cheap and shit, we won't take money from just anyone. You have to be really rich. We only want your money if you've got
for money,
lots.
but we're still picky if I get it right.
Exactly. No, absolutely. Yeah, beggars can't be choosers. Well, we are choosing. So there you go. Yeah, we want lots of money, not just little money. So
thanks,
why
everyone.
should all the bosses of Liberty have private jets and I don't? It's not fair. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye bye. Brazil next week. So awesome. Yeah. Bye bye.